All right, welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back. I hope you're all watching the confirmation ring, which I was, now it's off. Or at least some of you watching it?
Can we just watch that?
I would love to play it, but I have to teach actual law. When I taught for one semester at the Penn State Law School, and that year Penn State was actually the tournament. They never make it, but they actually made it. And I was teaching during like the round of 32, can't remember which round it was, and no one was paying attention to me at all. No one ever was watching the game, so I actually put the game cast on behind me, so at least they were looking at me. And then one other time, the Astros had an afternoon game. You probably remember it was a playoff game. They went to extra innings. It went like 11 or 12 innings. It went on forever. And I actually told them laptops closed because no one was paying attention. So as much as I would love to have the confirmation on, I will not do that today. Announcement, we have a makeup class. This year, the Jewish holidays fall on all of our classes, so I have to cancel a couple. But for those of you who are celebrating, have a good Passover. Or Passover, Rosh Hashanah, wrong holiday. So the first makeup will be, I'm sorry, I think it's our only makeup, but our makeup will be on Sunday at noon in this room. If you cannot make it, you have options. You can either watch the live stream, which I encourage, and when you're done, email me, so that you watch, I'll mark you present. Or you can watch it later, the recording on YouTube. Email me when you're done, I'll mark you present. I do this to have maximum fairness. I don't want to penalize people who have weekend plans, but I encourage you to watch this by the 16th. I'll give you 1 week to watch it. Don't fall much more behind than that. Okay, any questions on that?
So it was Sunday at noon again?
Yeah, Sunday, 12 o'clock, right in this room. Sit wherever you want, I don't care. And I will see you on Sunday. I'm doing both my makeup classes. And actually, Rosh Hashanah begins sundown on Sunday, so a few hours in advance. Any questions?
Me?
Oh, I'm sorry, Kendra. You weren't in my line of sight. I'm sorry.
If we show up on Sunday, are you going to be asking us a lot of questions?
I'll do what I usually do.
Oh, okay.
It will be a class like any other, just it'll be Sunday instead of Tuesday or Monday.
Okay.
Sound good? Okay. Thank you. All right. So let's do a question. Easy, start off. Just to refresh from last week's class. This one shouldn't be too difficult. Okay. Polling. Okay. So, easy, right? Who is the mortgagor? The buyer or the lender? This one should be straightforward. Oh, sorry, blocking it. This is not a well-positioned projector. It should really be like not where the thing is. It should be on the other side. But I'm basically staring to a bright light for 3 hours straight. It gets a little... What happened, Marcus?
No, it just kicked me out.
It kicked you out?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, it's not letting me, it's not giving any options. It's just the circle going and going.
Circle going.
It's working on the laptop.
All right, who's next? Who am I up to? Idea. Thank you. What's your answer here? The mortgage is the buyer. Why? The one who gives the mortgage. Now let's be precise. What exactly is a mortgage? I'm sorry? What is a lien? The promise to? Well, no. What exactly is a mortgage? Edwin, you next? What's a mortgage? Good. And what is that? What is that interest? Ooh, question harder than I thought. Idea is right. The buyer is the mortgagor, but my question is more basic. Costa. Are you next? What is a mortgage?
Gives the bank a right to the property in case the borrower defaults.
Ah, okay. So you said interest, I think, Edwin? Interest? Think of the word security interest. It's a better thing. You know when you go to a apartment for rental, you put down a security deposit, and for whatever reason you breach your lease, they keep the security deposit? Think of a mortgage the same way. Basically, a security deposit. But it's not just like your first and last month's rent. It's the entire damn house. And if for whatever reason you don't pay off the mortgage, they can actually come in and foreclose your interest. They can close out your interest. Right? They can close out your interest and they can acquire the property for foreclosure. And we discussed that last week. So when you think of the mortgage, it's not the money they give you, it's not, a promise. It's the actual security interest in your property that if you default on the loan, they can come in and possess it. Now, Lucas, let's say you want to buy a house, right? What's something you're going to do to make sure that you're getting what, you're getting what was promised? You want to buy a property, what are you going to do? Research, okay. What kind of research?
I mean, the area that I'm trying to buy it in.
Okay. Neighborhood, right? Crime, is it nice? Oh, okay, price. Okay, very good. Now, what happens if you are concerned that the person you're buying it from might have a mortgage? Why would that matter to you?
Because that I know somebody else has interest in that land and I don't. I don't fully have all the interest.
So let me ask you more question, right? Usually when you buy a property from someone, they have a mortgage. What do they usually do? No. That's Randy. He always my co-author for Colin Love. He's calling me about Mike Lee's testimony. I'll talk to him later. Okay.
I didn't hear it.
The question is this, right? I'll come back later. You're calling. You'll hear this. You're calling. You want to buy a house. I should have taken my damn call a bit quicker. You want to buy a house, and the seller has a mortgage on the property, right? Is that of concern to you?
I think it is.
Okay, good. Why is that of concern to you?
Because I know that.
Okay. So the question is this: what usually happens? Right? What usually happens when Justin? What usually happens when someone has a mortgage on the property and they sell it? What's usually the last thing you do? Right? They have a mortgage on the property, but they sell it. What do they usually do? Pay off the mortgage. Why?
So that they don't have an interest in the property.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I just want a house. I'm pretty sure the guy bought it from at a mortgage. When I walked in, the land was pretty clear, right? He paid off his debt, and therefore the bank's interest in the property vanished, right? But let's say, Samantha, thank you. Oh, your timing is impeccable, Samantha. Samantha, let's say you have a seller who's not so honest. And let's say Samantha says, you know what? I own this property. It's too simple. There's no mortgage whatsoever. Give me cash. What do you say to that? No, and what are you going to do? You're going to look into it, right? Trust but verified. Okay. Now, Marcella, how are you going to look into it? What's the actual process to determine if there are any mortgages or any sort of liens that are sitting on the property? Bingo. Okay? Bingo. Yes. Yes. You look into the record of the property. And how do you do that, Marcella? What's that process called? Kendall? Yes, ma'am. Title search, exactly right. You perform a title search. Okay? You perform a title search. Now, the book describes a title search to make sure that, the person selling to you actually has fee simple, right? That there's no one superior interest. But the title search is actually much more broad. It applies to any type of record on the property, including, for example, mortgages. You can perform a title search to see if the person selling has a mortgage. And if you find that the person has a mortgage and didn't pay off their debt, then you don't buy the property. Or if you find that the person who's selling to you doesn't actually have fee simple, someone else has the interest somewhere else, you don't buy the property. Right? These are all steps that are performed by a title engineer. I can do it. Right, I paid someone to do it. That's generally when you become older, you pay people to do stuff. That's one of the things that growing up gets you there. Okay? but you pay a title company to perform this search. Now, why do we have these title recording systems? To make it easy and safe to transfer property. Make it easy and safe to transfer property. There are going to be very few risks that someone commits fraud if you do your homework. Now, the reason why things go awry is people don't do their homework. They maybe say they take someone's word for it, or maybe they buy a quick claim deed because they really don't want to know the truth, right? Maybe they're speculators and they say, okay, I'll just take this deed for cheap price and hope it turns out to be okay. If not, we'll get something. Okay. All right. So the process is actually fairly simple, but it takes some time. So what I want to do is walk you through. If you go to page, 664 in your book, I want to walk you through it. Okay. It's in this paragraph, assume that a man didn't do it. Okay? So let me walk you through a couple concepts first. Okay? Kadisha, let me ask you this question. I sell you a property, right? I sell it to you. I'm the seller, you're the buyer. We never record that transaction. Again, I sell Blackacre to you, we never sell it, right? We never record it. Is that a valid transaction? Yeah, I give you Blackacre, you give me money. You sign it, statute of frauds, the entire deal. Neither of us records that transaction with Harris County. Is that a valid transaction? I can't hear. You're right. The answer is yes, but if you and I do this transaction, right, and we don't ever record it, is there any way that Celeste, for example, can find out about it? We never record it. No. So here's a concept that's often confusing to law firms, right? As between me and Khadijah, the transaction's valid, right? I know I sold it because I signed it, and she knows she bought it, she gave me cash for it. Right? So as between the two of us, it's valid. But to the world at large, no one else knows about it. So there's a difference, right? Keep this very, very closely in mind. Keep this very close in mind. A transaction is valid between the buyer and seller, whether or not it's recorded. Let's say it again. A transaction is valid between the buyer and the seller, whether or not it's recorded. But if it's not recorded, it fails to put third parties on notice. Right? If it's not recorded, it fails to put third parties on notice. Okay? So that's an important point, right? So it's not required buyer and seller to record, but it's a good idea. Okay? Now, when I say record, what do I mean? Well, in the olden days, you'd have these big books, right? There was no computers. You'd have a big book. And every single transaction would be recorded in this book. And it would include information. Who is the grantee and who is the grantor? Celeste, remind us, what's the difference between the grantee and the grantor? Very good. Very good. The grantor is the seller, the grantee is the buyer. Okay? And you would record information, right? Who is the grantee? Who is the grantor? What kind of deed is it? Is it a quitclaim deed? Is it a general warranty deed? What is the date that the transaction occurred on? Etc. Now, Kendra, is there any requirement to record a deed immediately upon the transaction occurring?
No.
No. Why not?
I don't know, maybe something can happen. Like, we can't immediately.
Yeah, people are lazy, right? They forget. So what often happens is that you're going to have two dates to think about, right? The date the transaction occurred and the date they actually got to the records office to record it. What makes this topic complex is those dates are often very far apart, right? I think the example I'll do in a couple minutes, one of the cases today, you have deeds that weren't recorded for 10 or 20 years later. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a valid transaction. However, during that time when it wasn't recorded, people were not aware of it. So there are two types. There are two types of indexes, right? You book, right? There are two types of indexes. One is called a tract index. Tract, it's not like a track you run around on, but tract, T-R-A-C-T, right? Tract refers to a piece of land. In certain jurisdictions, you actually have a grid, right? Think of, you ever played Battleship when you were a kid? Like, a bingo, right? D10, whatever. Imagine you divide the city of Houston to a grid. You can say, aha, this Blackacre is located at, C11, right? You can match up where it is in the grid. That makes things very easy because on a given piece of land, Blackacre at C11, here are all the people that had interest in it over time. There might be some mortgages, there might be some liens, maybe A had it, then B had it, then C had it, whatever it is, right? Unfortunately, the tract index, as simple as it sounds, is fairly rare. Why? Most cities in America were not created in a grid format. Land was sort of just lopped together in a sort of haphazard way. So the tract index might make your lives easier, but it doesn't have a lot of usage. And in fact, Texas has the other one, which is what we'll be talking about. The more prominent one is called the grantor-grantee index. The grantor-grantee index. And it sorts transactions in one of two ways. The grantor index lists the transactions, like who the grantor is, that is the seller. And the grantee index lists it based on who the buyer is. Right? So why is this important? Kendra next is Megan. No, Megan next. Megan, thank you. She pointed real quick. Megan, so let's say, you're Megan and you want to buy a house from Kendra, right? Where would you start your search for Blackacre?
I would start in the grantor because
the grantor?
Yeah.
Why would you start there? In other words, Megan, you're buying a house from Kendra, right? Do you know where Kendra got the house from? You just found a listing. Kendra selling Blackacre. You want to buy Blackacre from her, right? Do you know where Kendra got it from?
No, I have to go look for that.
So how do you find out?
Okay, grantee.
So what do you mean? So you're correct. The answer is grantee, but what would you look for in the grantee index? Exactly, right? This is somewhat counterintuitive. When you are the buyer, right? When you are the buyer, you want to know, is the seller, the grantor, the true owner? Right? So you think, of course, I look in the grantor index, the seller. No. Because at some point, Kendra today is the seller, but yesterday she was the buyer. Exactly, the buyer. So you have to go to the grantee index and search, when did Kendra acquire Blackacre? And then you find out who sold it to her, the grantor. And once you know who sold it to Kendra, you look up that person's name in the grantee index. Understand? So your search will always begin in the grantee index. Don't get this tripped up in an exam, right? You don't start in the you want to say, of course, Kendra's the grantor. I start in the grantor index. No. You always start your search with the name you know. And the name you know is Kendra, who is currently the seller, but she was previously a buyer. And then what happens, Chelsea, if you're, Chelsea buys a house from Kendra. You go through the grantee index, you don't find Kendra's name anywhere. What does that tell you?
She doesn't have that title.
She is not the owner of Blackacre. No offense, but she's a fraud, right? She's committing fraud. Right? That's your first challenge. Does this person's name, Kendra, I'm sorry, but does her name appear anywhere in the grantee index? If the answer is no, she has no record of Blackacre ownership, she is committing a fraud, and then you don't buy the property. All right? So any questions? Try and keep this as simple as possible. Now, wouldn't it be easy if there was like Google for this, right? You just like Google Blackacre and see all the people listed one after the other. No, that'd be way too easy. Some jurisdictions actually are digitizing the records, but it's not this simple. To this day, you need to actually go and look at paper books. And especially you need to look at paper books because you have to go back to a certain period of time. This will depend on your level of tolerance, but going back to maybe 1900 might not be enough. 1850s might not be enough. 1800s might not be enough, especially if you're dealing with oil interests, mineral interests. When you have potentially millions of dollars in deposits at stake, you can't mess around with a skimpy title search, right? You can have significant royalties that are just washed away because you didn't give the right interest. Yeah, I had one student sat right there a couple of years ago. He had some great uncle who died somewhere in West Texas, and they found oil on his property, and he didn't have a will, and they had to split it among 40 different grandchildren, great grandchildren. It was really old, and it was an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. Okay. All right. So any questions on that? All right. So let's do this example on page 664. We'll take a few minutes on this, but I want to walk through this very, very carefully. Let me stop this. See if we got it right. 94%. Very good. Everyone got it. Everyone got it right. All right. Who am I up to? All right, Rachel. So I'm going to start with you. I'll come to you in a minute. Let me make this a little bigger so you can read it back in class. So this is meant to simulate a title search. If you want to actually go down to the records office in Harris County, you're welcome to do it, or you can do this, whichever you find easier. Okay. So it says, assume, oh, by the way, you know this already, but on my exams, I always try and give people names that are in alphabetical order, like, Adam and Bob and Carol and Dan. Just keep your life easier, right? One less thing for you to worry about. So it says, assume that a man named Dubek, that name is D, right? That tells you there are probably 4 people in this exam, A, B, C, and D, just mental. If you see what letter in the alphabet they are, I can prepare yourself for the rest of the question. Well, professors are very predictable. So it says, assume that a man named Dubek is selling to your client a tract of land called Blackacre. You want to find out how Dubek received title. You look in the grantee index. Okay? Rachel, what exactly are you going to search for in the grantee index? Right? All you know about is that the seller's name is Dubek, right? He's selling you Blackacre. What are you going to try and find in the grantee index?
His family name.
Okay, you look for Dubek. Okay, what are you going to search for? What specific transaction, Rachel, are you looking for in this grantee index? A sale of what? Good, a sale of Blackacre. And who is the buyer in that case? Very good. Okay, so what you do, you start in the grantee index. You start in the grantee index, and you try to find when Dubek was the buyer, that is the grantee. And Rachel, when did you start your search? What date and time? Yeah, from the present, right? So from 2018, you go 2017, 2016, you keep flipping back and back and back and back, right? These are not in a single book. These might be in books that are scattered across an entire, records hall. They'd be very dusty, very musty. So you start 2018, and then you go back, and you find a deed from Dubek Cotter in 1977. Right? You have a deed, right? You have a deed, deeded deed in 77. So Joey, what does that tell you? You nailed my next question. Very good. Right? You anticipate my question. Did they ask that last year also? No. Even better. Okay, good. So my first question was, when did the transaction occur? That's a little ambiguous. It doesn't really say. Now, presumably, the transaction occurs the same year that was recorded, but that need not be the case. But we'll just presume here the transaction happened in 77 and recorded in 77. So, Joey, what does that tell us? From 77 until 2018, what's the state of Blackacre?
Dubek has possession
Are you sure? Is it possible that Dubeck sold it in 1978? Would you know that at this point?
At this point, no.
No, you wouldn't. Again, all you know is that in 1977, Dubeck was a buyer. You don't know if he sold it because what haven't you searched yet?
Guarantor.
The grantor index, right? Again, you don't know if Dubeck handed it off in 1978 because you haven't searched the grantor index. Be very careful. Don't assume that because the name's in the first book that everything matches up to the second book because it might be a totally different story. All right, so Gabe, next. It says, now you want to know how how Cotter received title. So you look again in the grantee index under Cotter's name. From 77 backwards in time until you find a deed to Cotter from Barker in 1952. All right, Gabe, what does that tell you? Simple word. What does that mean? And who sold it to whom? Very good. Barker sold it to Cotter in 1952. Now again, Gabe, do we know from this whether Cotter actually kept the property for that entire 20 or 25 years? Do we know that? No idea. But we do know that at some point in 1952 that Barker sold it to Cotter. All right, let me go to the next one. This will be for Lauren. So now it says, now you want to know how Barker received title. And so you run Barker's name in the grantee index from 1952 backwards in time for the source of title. Okay, blah, blah, blah. By running each name backwards, you can discover that the source of title of each person is person on black. You go back to 1900. Okay, why 1900? Easy to understand. And you find the original grantor, the OG, if you will, right? The original grantor. sorry, it's too easy. You'll never forget it. O is always original. Just so you know, O is always the original. Just you'll never forget it now. So you come back to 1900, and you find that O, Oliver, is the original grantor. So Lauren, what does that tell you? What's the significance of going back to 1900? Why is that an important point? Now that the first person ever humbled the Blackacre? Someone probably put 4, right? But presumably in this case, 100 years is an adequate search, so leave it there. Okay, so now Lauren, once you know that the Oliver is the original grantor, what do we do? What's our next step? Yes, ma'am. Very good. You switch books. You switch from the grantee index to the grantor index. Why? You've gone back to what's called patent. Not exactly. You've gone back to the source. And now you're going to search the grantor index. Right? Daniel, what will you be searching for in the grantor index? What's the first thing you're looking for? Exactly. What are you trying to find? Conveyed, exactly. So you want to search at what point did Oliver convey Blackacre to someone else? Now we don't know who that person is. I'm going to guess his name begins with an A, just because things work out that way. But again, if you're never sure, you have to guess. Just use the alphabetical order trick. It might even tell you a question. I'm serious. But you know at some point Oliver sold it to someone, right? So it says you start with Oliver in 1900. You look in 1901, 1902, 1903, etc., and you find in 1915 that Oliver sold it to Anderson, right? That's Michelle, right? Michelle, what does that tell you? In 1915, Oliver sold it to A. What's the significance of that? Okay. Now we know that Oliver sold it to A in 1915. Is it possible that Oliver sold it to someone else in 1912?
It's possible, but you wouldn't know.
Oh, she put in the next question. Very good. So it would be easy enough to say that, of course, if we search Oliver's transactions for Blackacre every single year from 1900 to 1915, we can rule out the possibility that there was a fraudulent transaction. But Michelle says, can we rule it out? No, why not, Michelle?
Because it wasn't recorded?
Louder for everyone else.
Because it wasn't recorded?
Because it may not have been recorded, right? Just imagine that Oliver sold it to, Igor, right? In 1912, and Igor never recorded it. We would never know. And then poor Anderson comes along and says, aha, I own Blackacre. Not so fast. Not so fast. Okay, so then next, having found that, next deed you find is from Anderson to Barker in 1934, but it's recorded in 1930. Zach, okay. Zach, what's up with that? There's a transaction from Anderson to Barker in 1934, but it was not recorded till 39. What do we do with that? What's the significance of that?
I guess my assumption would be that Parker owned it for 5 years. Was recording it.
Or was lazy?
39.
Forgot? Didn't hire a lawyer? There are lots of reasons why people don't record. I mean, it's easy. Oh, they made a mistake. People, they're not lawyers. They're not statistics. They may not know the right? But now, and here comes the trickier question, right? Baker thought he had it in 1934. Wasn't recorded until 39. What happens in that 5-year period, right? Is the world on notice in that 5-year period that Blackacre changed hands? What?
No.
No, that's right. Good. No, the answer is no. So, who was basically the record owner then, from 34 to 39?
Well, Barker owned it, but the world didn't know that.
So who did the world think was the owner? That's right. Anderson. Right. As far as the world is concerned, Anderson was still the record owner. And maybe. Oh, Kendrick.
What happens if he died before he recorded it and there's no records? Does it just go back to Anderson?
Well, his heir can record it.
Huh?
His heir can record. Whoever inherits the deed can
Oh,
record
but if
it.
they don't find the deed then there's no proof?
I think we have a case like that next class.
Oh, okay.
I think we do, but just hang tight to that one for next class. Right? But let me go back to Joyce for a minute, right? Joyce. If you are trying to buy a Blackacre, let's say 1935, who would appear to be the owner at that point? So could Anderson still try to sell up the property in 1935? And it would look legit, right? So the answer is the next sentence. Just ignore that, right? But in 1935, Joyce, what name are you still looking for?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
If you're doing a title search in the grantor index in 1935, what name are you searching for? Anderson, she's right? You don't start searching for Barker's name, right, until 39, because he wasn't the record owner. There'd be no reason why. If you want to be safe, you probably search both their names. That's what actually I would probably recommend. Search both their names in 35, from 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, because maybe Barker just thought he recorded and forgot it. Maybe like he asked his assistant to, and they didn't actually do it. So there are lots of reasons why it didn't occur. But I would search both. But in any event, by the time you get to 39, you can drop Anderson's name. You can focus on Barker. Then it says, in 1952, Barker sells to Cotter and recorded on the same day. Okay, that's very good, very efficient. And then you check Cotter's name from 1952, 77, Cotter, and you go forward to Dubé. Okay? Does everyone understand this process where you start with the grantee index and you go to the grantor index? If you don't get this, go back on YouTube and watch this again. It's only like a paragraph in your book, the most important paragraph in the entire assignment. Right, you sign 30 pages and only 5 sentences matter. So this is very important that you get how this process is going through. And I can test on this in a lot of different ways. Make sure you get it carefully. Because I can give you a chain of title, and I can make one little fact in the middle match up, or maybe it doesn't match up, right? Where there's a variance between the grantor index and the grantee index, and you have to catch that variance. I test on that a number of times. You got to be very careful how you track it. All right, so any questions on this? Right, start the grantee index, go all the way back to the original, then you go forward, and the grantor index to the present. And hopefully they match up, but if my past has an indication, they will not match up. There'll be a very subtle difference, maybe about when one was recorded versus when one was actually the transaction occurs. Yeah, I think-
Parker was the superior claim, right? They just let no one know about it.
Well, the superior claim between whom? You know? Yes. Everyone heard her question, right? In 1934, actually 35 would be better, right? In 35, between Anderson and Barker, Barker has a superior claim. But what if Cotter comes along, for example, he doesn't know about it? That's where the next topic comes into play, which is the recording statutes. I think you give me a transition. You know, you give me a transition, right? That's the next topic, which is the recording statutes. Okay? All right, so let's do the first case, though, before we get there. Luthi versus Evans. Who am I up to? Sergio, you want to give me the facts here, please?
So Grace Owen was the owner of some interest in some oil and gas leases,
Very good. Okay.
And then she also wrote a second assignment to
Good.
and it ended up
Very good. So this is a classic case, right? You have Miss Grace and her family members who were in a county with mineral interests, right? Valuable oil and gas leases. And she perhaps deliberately, or maybe not, we don't know, sold the same interest to two different parties. But what makes this case, I think, very difficult is the presence of an old Mother Hubbard clause. Take the case, you know, what's a Mother Hubbard clause, as they say?
So, it's like if you're on your deathbed and you're just saying, "Oh, I convey all of my land to so and so when I die," and
Very
so
good.
it,
Very good. So you can imagine, right? You're on your deathbed. You don't have a lot of time left. You can say, I leave all my property in this county to my son, right? And then you execute it, have a signed witnesses, etc. That's, you know, an understandable transaction. You don't have time to serve everything. But this case was different, right? Ms. Grace included a transfer of interest to, quote, all interests by them in the county. All right? Let me read it to you. The quote says, I think it's on page, what page?
670.
670, yeah. It says, all interests of whatsoever nature, whatsoever, that's a weird one. Is it page 670, you said? Oh, thank you so much. It says, all interests of whatsoever nature in all working interests and overriding royalty interests in all oil and gas leases in Kofi County, Kansas, owned by them, here comes the key part, whether or not the same are specifically enumerated above. Marcos, what does that language mean? What is that? I just read you a paragraph. That entire passage, right? What land is that referring to? It says all interests in Kofi County, whether or not enumerated. What does that mean? What does enumerated mean?
Vested or
Very good word. Oh, whole life's in college, you're invested, right? Very good. Sure. Marcos, does this specify all the specific properties that Ms. Grace owns in the county?
no,
But what does it convey?
it conveys the land,
What land?
the land that has the oil.
Does it matter if those specific properties are not enumerated, listed?
No.
Okay, very good. So the purpose of the Mother Hubbard clause, right? The purpose of the Mother Hubbard clause is saying, I'm giving you all of my land, in this case oil and gas leases, even if they're not enumerated. Because she listed a couple, lot number 1, lot number 2, lot number 3, black acre, white acre, green acre, and all their acres, right? Now, Aaron, is there any problem with Miss Grace giving a Mother Hubbard clause? Oh, you know the nursery rhyme, like old Mother Hubbard in the cupboard, everything goes in her cupboard? It's a nursery rhyme. No?
I've never heard that.
Okay, Google it for later. All right, so Aaron, actually, I had a student a couple of years ago who said she was at a law firm. It happened that she was the only one at her firm who had a Mother Hubbard clause. The only one. So Aaron, as between Ms. Grace and Tor, right, is there any problem with the Mother Hubbard clause between the two of them?
Between the tour and
Between Ms. Grace, between the buyer and the seller. Is there any problem with the Mother Hubbard clause?
no,
No, why not?
because it includes everything. It's all the properties that have been
Okay, very
listed.
good. Very good. So as between the buyer and the seller, right, as between the buyer and the seller, there's no problem whatsoever with the Mother Hubbard clause. No problem whatsoever. Okay, you can do it. It's fine. Andrew, where does the problem arise, though? Where is there a problem?
The recording system and the statutes they have and how you should properly record it.
Ah, Andrew, how can you record a Mother Hubbard clause?
You have to be specific.
Aha. Okay. Very good. He's right. So here's the problem with the first case, the Luthi case. As between the buyer and the seller, there's no problem whatsoever with the Mother Hubbard clause, right? If Ms. Grace wants to leave all the property in the county to this guy, she can do it. But how is someone else supposed to know about it? And under Kansas law, and I think probably the law in all states, or at least most states, you have to have a specific description of the land, right? Miranda, why is it important to have a specific description of the land for the recording system? Good. Very good. You have to do a search, right? If you're searching for Ms. Grace, you want to know, does she have an interest in black acre, in white acre, in green acre? But you can't have some sort of unknown, unidentified property in a title search. You can't do that, right? I suppose you could search for every single entry of the name Grace in the book. I mean, I guess you could do that, but that's not an effective way of running a system. You have to match a name to a black acre piece of property. So the court found that the Mother Hubbard clause are valid between the buyer and seller. But the Mother Hubbard clause do not put subsequent buyers on notice. It does not give a subsequent buyer what's called constructive notice. Madison, what is constructive notice? What's that phrase mean?
Constructive notice, I think it basically means that it's like actual notice, like their awareness of the.
Well, is constructive notice that, I come over and tell you, hey, Madison, Ms. Grace sold black acre?
No, it's just in writing or.
It can, you can figure it out based on writing. When I say constructive, it means would a reasonable person looking through the record books learn about this, right? It doesn't require, you to search every conceivable property in the county. I mean, in theory, if you search every single piece of land in the county, you would find that Ms. Grace has an interest in this. You would find it would take you forever. But that's not what the law requires. The law requires a specific description of the property to give constructive notice. And therefore, the Mother Hubbard clause was not valid. And, sucks for you. If she sold you land with a Mother Hubbard clause, you think you got it great, it's not yours. Because it doesn't put the other party on notice. Okay?
John,
Yeah, Brooke.
If you're the buyer, you receive property for the mother Hubbard clause, and when you go to record it, you use.
Oh. But what are you recording? No. Everyone understand Brooke's question. She put a very good question, right? She's like, well, what if you're the buyer and you take a mother Hubbard clause, and then you just record separate transactions for each plot of land? Is that what you're saying?
No, maybe. Is there any way for the buyer to like say, okay, this applies to this land, for the recorder to be able to?
Now, what's the problem with that, Brooke? If it's just the buyer making this notation, what's missing?
But if he has the document,
What does the document say?
all land within this
And how do you
county,
prove that that land belongs to so-and-so?
go to the record
And what would you find?
that it belongs to so and so.
And then what would you do if you want to be safe? Who would you need to execute a document to make that work?
Well, the owner.
Yeah. The long and short of it is, if you want to make the Mother Hubbard clause work, you'd have to then go back to the original seller and have them execute a subsequent document saying, I am transferring the Kufel lease, for example, to the seller. They may not want to, right? Again, I don't know that Mrs. Grace had bad intentions. It's possible. We don't know. But maybe she wanted to engage in a couple side deals, right? She might sell this property to several different people. We don't know. But Brooke's intuition is good. You can clean up the Mother Hubbard clause, but you have to get the seller to come across and actually convey something. You need that for the statute of frauds. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. All right. Don't worry about the stuff about the government surveying. I wish they'd just take out of the book. It's really complicated. It's not worth your not worth your attention. Okay, let's do the next case. Who am I up to? Cheyenne, you want to give me the facts, please, in Orr versus Byers?
So with the judgment, because the name was spelled wrong on.
Let me just interrupt to come back to you. All right, so have you taken professional responsibility yet? Okay, so you understand the general premise of malpractice, right? Have you gone across this? Lawyers aren't expected to be perfect, right? They're not. We're all human. We make mistakes. But sometimes if you make a mistake, it might cost you, okay? When will a mistake cost you? If your client loses a case because of your mistake. So the classic example is blowing a statute limitation, right? Let's say there's a 2-year statute limitation, and then you miscalculate the date, and you file on 2 years plus 1. Or the deadline's midnight, and you file a brief at 12:01 a.m. You blew the case. This happens in South Texas, where occasionally you have a legal writing memo that's submitted 1 minute late. You know what the grade is in that case? An F. The grade's an F. And students think, oh, that's not fair. Well, welcome to the world. If you blow your client's deadline by a minute, your case is over. And by the way, your client can then sue you for whatever amount of money they probably could have gained had they timely litigated the case. Even if the case is a loser, right? They may not have won the case. By blowing the statute of limitation, you're out of luck. You need what's called malpractice insurance, which is just like any other type of insurance, where an insurance company defends against you if you commit malpractice, but you don't want to rely on that because it's very expensive and you can have a judgment against you. And even if they pay off the judgment, you have a disciplinary action where the bar can suspend you, remove your law license. So be very careful. So this is not a case where a law firm blew a statute of limitation. They did something even far stupider, right? They actually won the case. They litigated a case all the way to judgment. They got a favorable judgment, right? They got everything done, except Cheyenne, what was the one thing that they screwed up on? Oh, they misspelled the name, right? So just to understand what's going on here. Let's say, Cheyenne sues me for some judgment. Let's say I committed a tort. And she gets a judgment of, was it $50,000, right? I may not have the money to pay her. And she knows that. So what they can do is they can put out what's called a lis pendens. right? A lis pendens, which we'll see. What that means is that you put out a recorded notice saying, hey, if anyone wants my property from Josh, just be aware that there's a $50,000 judgment against him, and any transaction might have that $50,000 taken off the top. Okay? You can also take out what's called a lien, right? An L-I-E-N, right? Where I say, okay, Josh has $50,000 debt to me. He's not paying up. I'm going to put a lien on his house. And if he ever sells Blackacre, I get the first $50,000 on that transaction. Right? Everyone with me. But the problem, Cheyenne said, is she didn't spell the name correctly. The law firm spelled it. So the guy's name was Elliot. 2 L's, 2 T's. It was recorded with 2 L's and 1 T and 1 L and 1 T. I'm blocking it, right? So they spelled it every way except for the correct way, right? And Elliot, I suppose, is a common enough name. But the consequence of not spelling it correctly is it doesn't put people on notice, right? The consequence of misspelling the name is it does not put people on notice about the correct judgment. So if I want to go buy Blackacre and I go search for William Elliott with 2 L's and 2 T's, I won't find any judgment against it, and I pay the transaction just fine. But again, this was malpractice. And what actually happened in this case, it's not entirely clear from the facts, but I think what happened here is the client said, I'll tell you what, you just pay me $50,000 now to make up for the difference, and you, lawyer, if you win the case, you get to keep the $50,000, right? That's why it's called Orr versus Byers, right? Orr was actually the lawyer. Everyone notice that? The case called Orr versus Byers. Orr was the lawyer. The lawyer was basically litigating his own case because he screwed up. The buyer, right? The client got screwed. And the client said, you give me $50,000 now, and then you can have the judgment. If the judgment prevails and it yields $50,000, the lawyer can keep it. If the court rules against them, as they did, the lawyer gets nothing. So the actual plaintiff in this case was the lawyer and not the buyer, the client, which is it's a weird deal, right? It's a very strange case, California, right? But this is how they worked it out. So, Brittany, what actually happened? What did the court think about this misspelling E-L-L-I-O-T-T, 1 L's, 2 T's? How did the court approach this?
They consider the doctrine of
Idem sonans, yeah. Let's see if I always pronounce this thing wrong. It's idem sonans. Idem sonans. What the heck is that?
Where there's a presumption that the person's identity is what it is because it is likely similar to other spellings or other representations of the name.
Okay, very good. Did the court accept that doctrine in this context, Brittany?
No, they didn't.
Very good. Why not?
They said that it didn't apply to real property. That it's usually when you're concerned with just the identity of someone.
Very good. Very good.
Rights.
Right. So the court rejects the idem sonans doctrine, right? They do not require a prospective buyer to search for all the various spellings of a name, right? Megan, why does the court not impose this burden on buyers to check all these various spellings and such?
Because it would be too burdensome.
Yeah, yeah.
The burden is on the creditor.
Very good, very good. This would be a huge burden, right? To have to search for every alternate spelling for names would impose a lot of burden. Now, let me tell you something. As a practical matter, if you're a competent title search company, you're going to do this anyway, right? If you are a competent title search company, you're going to search for every conceivable spelling of a name just in case there's an error. And this is very important before computers, right? Because if you're just writing by hand, you might make a typo. I guess a righto, whatever you call it, right? You might just have an errant stroke, and you might make 2 L's that look like a T, or might just forget 1 L. There are lots of ways you can make mistakes with handwritten records. So the court, by the way, this is the only California case in the book, I think, where they stick with the common law. I think it's the only one. There might be one other, but basically they stay with the common law here. So they reject the idem sonans doctrine. Okay. Any questions on the or versus buyer case? I like to think that the buyer's name was Buyer. Makes it easier. Yeah. All right. Any question on that? All right. So now the next topic, which Audrey alluded to about 20 minutes ago, is called recording acts. Recording acts. Students often have difficulty with these, and let me explain why. Here we go. Here. Generally speaking, right? If I sell you Blackacre, right? Mike, I sell you Blackacre, right? It doesn't matter if we record, right? Between me and you, we sell Blackacre, we have a writing, money's exchange, it's a valid transaction. But what happens if I'm a crook? Maybe I am, right? And I simultaneously sell it to Mike, and then I sell it to Mariah, the same Blackacre on the same day.
It's going to be the first person to record probably has the better chance.
Well, that's one way, right? So Mike just described what's called the race statute, right? The race statute. The purpose of a recording statute is to resolve a conflict, right? Where I sold Blackacre to Mike and Mariah, sold it to both of them. How do you then decide who has the better claim to the land? They both claim it. I'm a crook. I sold it to both of them, right? They can come after me for a fraud claim. They can always do that. But the purpose of the recording acts, or recording statutes are called, is to resolve conflicts. To resolve conflicts between two or more buyers. And by the way, it's not just two. It can be 3 or 4 for an exam. I can make lots of people have conflicts, right? But the purpose of recording acts is to resolve any dispute between buyer number 1 and buyer number 2. And there's several different types of recording statutes. Mike already hinted at the first one. The first one is called a race statute, R-A-C-E, a race statute. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a race to the courthouse, right? Whoever records first wins. It's a race to the records office. So take a look at example number 2. Mike, you want to read it for us, please? Page 683.
O, owner of Blackacre, conveys Blackacre to A, who does not record the deed. O subsequently conveys Blackacre to B for valuable consideration. B actually knows of the deed to A. B records the deed from O to B. Under a race statute, B prevails over A, and B owns Blackacre.
Very good. Mike, is that fair?
No, but it's clear.
Oh, what a good answer. You're my former student. Yeah. Why is it clear but not fair?
Because they want definitive answers.
Certainty. Yeah, very good. Same as last year, right? Same deal. Here, B is being dishonest, right? B, which is Mariah and Mike, right? Mariah knows that I sold to Mike first. She knows, but she doesn't care. It's like, screw it. I get to the office first. I win. Mariah bought Blackacre knowing that poor Mike is just hanging out. Maybe on vacation, hasn't had a chance to record yet. But in a race statute, it's a bright line rule. If there are 2 subsequent buyers, whoever records first wins. If there are 2 subsequent buyers, whoever records it first prevails. It's easy. There's no question of intent. There's no question of what they know when. It's easy. This is by far the minority rule. I think it's only in Louisiana and North Carolina, where 2 states in the entire country have it. So if you're in Louisiana, go for it. But everywhere else, it doesn't really apply. And you can imagine this is very unfair, where basically it rewards crooks, right? It rewards someone. I mean, imagine Mariah says, I know that Josh sold Blackacre to Mike a year ago, but he never recorded it. Maybe he forgot. And just gives Josh some money and goes on the side and records it. She prevails, right? Mariah's the owner. Now again, Mike can come against me for fraud. Don't forget that. There's still a fraud action because Mike engaged in a fraudulent act. But in terms of who owns Blackacre, Mariah. Everyone with me? Okay. Again, that's minority rule. We start there. The second one is in about roughly half the states, and in Texas is one of these states. Is called the notice statute. You want to read, Mariah, example number 3 for me, please? On page 683.
O, owner of Blackacre, conveys Blackacre to A, who
for a valuable consideration. B has no knowledge of A's deed. Under a notice statute, B prevails over A even though B does not record the deed from O to B.
Okay, so let's just walk this one step at a time. I'll use Mike and Mariah again to make it easy. I sell Blackacre to Mike. He's happy and never bothers recording. Just doesn't think about it. I then go, Mariah, when I sell you Blackacre. Mariah, do you have any way of knowing whether Mike recorded his deed or not? Would you even know there's another transaction at hand? Why will you not know that? Exactly. Because Mike never recorded it, there's no constructive notice. Now, she might have personal knowledge. Maybe she asked him, right? But there's no constructive knowledge. So Mariah is what's called a BFP, right? A bona fide. You know this phrase from contracts? The bona fide purchase for value. She took it in good faith. She had no knowledge of Mike's transaction. She fell for my fraud, and then she buys it. Okay? Now, Mariah, you prevail over Mike. Does it matter whether you record or not under a notice statute? Do you have to record in order to prevail over Mike?
No.
Exactly. The key element of the notice statute, which is again what we have in Texas, the key element of the notice statute is the subsequent buyer does not need to record. The subsequent buyer is not required to record. She beats Mike. What mattered is that she did not have notice. That's the important point. She did not have notice. If your subsequent buyer takes that notice, you prevail, even if you fail to record it yourself. Attention.
So if C comes along and does the same thing and she doesn't record, then C will prevail?
Yeah, which is why I said earlier you can have three or more, or two or more. It could be three, yeah.
To stop this pattern, you just need to record it.
Yeah, it can get messy. And in which case, both Mariah and Mike could sue me for fraud, but C will be the rightful owner. Now, Lauren, let me ask you a question. How do we know what Mariah knew or didn't know? How do we know what her intent is? How's a court to ascertain her intent?
I mean, you could ask her.
You could ask her. What do you think she's going to say?
She'll say, "Oh, I didn't know."
Oh, I didn't know.
You can't really.
See.
You can't really do that. You just have to kind of just go off what you, I guess, think at that moment.
Yeah. So the upshot of the notice statute is it's fair. I'm sorry, it's fair, right? It rewards Mariah for acting in good faith. But the downside is it's very uncertain. I think Lauren said, "How are you going to know?" You're not going to know. She could lie. And in fact, presume people are lying, right? Presume that if I ask you, did you know about this? No, I didn't know, not me, right? Whatever, right? Presume people are being untruthful. So again, the upshot is it's very fair, right? It's much more fair than the race statute, the North Carolina, Louisiana one. But the downside is it's very tough to ever actually know for certain what her intent was. Okay. That's the notice statute. Let me give you the Texas. I have it up here on the board. Okay. So this is the Texas notice statute. So it says, if written evidence of title has been filed according to law in the land offices or public archives, a copy of the evidence may be recorded if the original was properly executed under the law and the copy is certified, blah, blah, blah. Okay. There it is. Here we go. Here's the important point. A court may not admit a title to land that was filed, blah, 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 unless the person who had the location had actual notice of the older title, right? Actual notice are basically the same thing. If you had notice, you're out of luck. If you didn't have notice, you're okay. But again, it's very tough to prove. It's very tough to prove whether you have notice or not. Okay. Any questions on that? All right, let's go to the third one. The third one is the most complicated one. Of course, it's one California has, right? You can predict exactly how that goes. You want to read for me? Who's next? Audrey. Question. No, example number 4, please.
Owner of Blackacre conveys Blackacre and he does not record the deed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. The biggest difference between the notice and race notice is in the race notice, that's California, the subsequent buyer has to record to prevail. Right? The biggest difference between the notice in Texas and the race notice in California is the subsequent buyer must record. So in this case, Audrey, B never recorded, right? So who prevailed?
In the notice period?
No, in the race notice, in example 4. Who prevails here?
A won because A recorded first.
Okay. B did not record, right? Even though B was a bona fide purchaser, because B didn't record first, B cannot prevail. Now, what if it was different, right? All right, so let me flip it up for you. It says, O conveys Blackacre to B, which is under the A's deed, and then B records first. Who would prevail then?
B records first.
Yeah. Who would prevail then?
Then B records.
Good. Had B recorded first, B would have prevailed. The race notice, as the name suggests, is a hybrid. It merges elements of the race jurisdiction and the notice. Right? Now go back to the race statute. It didn't matter if Mariah knew that the transaction with Mike occurred. If she was the race to the courthouse, she won, it's hers. But here, for Audrey's case, not only must the buyer record first, the buyer can't have any notice. Right? Again, 2 things have to happen. The buyer has to record, and the buyer has to lack notice that this other transaction occurred. Now, Max, right?
Yes.
Max, what happens if we have a situation where A records first, and then B records the next day? What happens there?
With the,
Race notice.
this third step,
Yeah.
who had notice?
Well, Max, here's the question, right? When B bought Blackacre, she had no notice. But then she records after A records. How does that change the situation?
Because she be recorded and doesn't have notice, it's...
No. Here's the sequence. Let me write it out for you, right? I'm changing the fact pattern, so it's a little bit different, right? Right? O sells to A, O sells to B. Without notice. A records. Okay? At this point, once A records, how does it affect the scenario?
Because B doesn't have notice, that's part of the...
Does B still not have notice? What happens once A records?
It's recorded, yeah.
Everyone heard what he said. Once A records, it puts B on notice. Okay? Once A records, B is put on notice. Now you say, well, Josh, I just went there to record. You still have a duty to check things out. There's now notice to put you on. I'll put you on notice that there was another subsequent purchaser. So once this happens and A records first, A still prevails. That's example number 4. Not obvious, right? The race notice statute is a little more complicated than the notice one. Notice, I think, is the easiest one to apply. Okay? In other words, put it simply, the California rule, the race notice, punishes people for failing to record. It punishes people who fail to record. It encourages an effective and efficient recording system. Okay, one with me so far. We'll do some questions. I know this is a little bit iffy, a little bit tricky. All right, let's take a look at, on the next page, 685, please. There's some questions. Christiana, I think you're on deck. All right. You're already problem number 1, please, Christiana.
Sure. O conveys Blackacre to A, who does not record. O subsequently dies, leaving H as her heir. H then conveys Blackacre to B, who records. B purchases for valuable consideration and without notice of the deed from O to A. Who prevails?
Okay, well, don't read the rest of the sentence, but it's there. So I hate when these questions, the answer's right after it, but it's fine, okay? So what happens here, right? O conveys to A, who doesn't record. O dies. H, the heir, inherits it and conveys it to B, who records. B does not know about the deed from O to A. So who wins here? Why does B prevail? Yes.
Honestly, well, I know the answer, but honestly, how are we supposed to know without knowing where they are?
Does it matter? In any jurisdiction would B lose here?
No, it's not.
Ah, tell me why.
Because A didn't record.
Yeah. So look, okay, so let's walk through one at a time. In a race statute, who would win? Who is first to report? Good. In a notice statute, who would prevail? Why would B prevail in a notice statute? Exactly. B took without any notice, and then in a race notice statute, who would prevail? Very good. So the answer here is actually the same, all the above. B would prevail in all three instances. You want to see that? All right, Landon, let's see number 2, which does, I think, does change a little bit depending which jurisdiction you're in. So want to read number 2, please? Okay. Okay. Ah, okay. Okay, so there's a lot going on here, right? So let's walk through this one step at a time, right? One step at a time. No, let me walk you through, okay? So, O conveys to A, who does not record. So far, so good, right? O conveys to B, who purchases in good faith for valuable consideration, right? Under a notice statute, who would prevail at that point, A or B? Just at that point. So my question is, under a notice statute, who would prevail at that point, A or B? It doesn't matter. Under a notice statute, who would prevail between the two of them? What does a notice statute require? Who prevails in a notice statute? B or A? Why? What? No, I don't think you're getting this. I'll come back. Hannah, who prevails here? Between A and B. In a notice jurisdiction, who prevails here? At this point. It doesn't matter in a notice jurisdiction. A notice jurisdiction, again, go back to your notes. What does a bonus, go back to your notes, right? What does the notice statute say? Read from your notes. What do you have written down? Okay, so in this case, between A and B, did B have any notice of the A transaction? So under a notice statute, who has a superior claim, A or B? No. Elise? Why B? All right, let me explain this again. A notice statute, right? A notice statute asks one question. Did the subsequent buyer have notice of the prior transaction? In this case, Elise, did B have notice of the transaction to A? How do we know that? No, that's wrong. That's wrong. Anthony, how do we know that B lacked notice of the A transaction? Read the question. Yes.
Or advisable.
Yeah, the key word there is good faith, right? It doesn't matter if it's recorded or not. It's good faith. B is a bona fide purchase for value. Right? So Anthony, who has a superior claim, A or B, between the two of them?
Between the two of them in a notice statute, it's B.
That's right, okay. B has the superior claim. Does everyone see that? If you don't put your... Elise, Elena, Hannah, do you get that? Do you see that? If you don't tell me, stop me. I'll keep on this one. You see that? Okay, so let's try it again then. Elena, let's try this one now. So next sentence, it says, A then records and conveys to C. Okay, A records and conveys to C. If you're C, right, Elena, what do you know happened? What's the chain that you're aware of? And where did A get it from? No, there is. It says A then records. What is A recording? Very good. Okay, very good. Correct. You now know there's a transaction from O to A and from A to C. And it also says C purchased in good faith. Right, Hannah, does C have any knowledge whatsoever about the O to B transaction? Yes. Does C have any knowledge of the O to B transaction? Why? Why? You're correct. Tell me why. Exactly. B never recorded. So we don't know, if you're C, who the superior claim is, right? All right, back to Elise. So now the question is this. We already said that B prevails over A in a notice jurisdiction, right? B prevails over A. Who wins between C and B? Who prevails between C and B? Because they both going to claim Blackacre. This is in a notice statute. No. What is the notice statute? Who prevails in the notice statute? It's the same thing over and over again. Read it for your notes. Who prevails in a notice statute? Just read for your notes. Subsequent. Who's a subsequent buyer here? Why? What does subsequent mean? I'm not moving on. What? So who was the subsequent purchaser here? Why? Yes, that's it. That's what I'm looking for. Yes, that's right. So Elise, finish up. C's subsequent buyer. Did they purchase in good faith? Is C a bona fide? So who prevails, C or B? That's it. In a notice statute, C prevails over B because C is a subsequent bona fide purchaser. C has a stronger claim than does B. So we have here's a weird situation, right? You have a hierarchy. You have three people who claim Blackacre, A, B, and C. Who has the strongest claim? C. Who has the second strongest claim? B. Who has the weakest claim? A. C has the strongest, B has the next middle, and then A has the weakest claim. Right? This is the sort of thing you have to do in an exam. You have to rank the claims. If I say, who has the strongest claim in the transaction, you say, well, C is the strongest, then comes B, then comes A. Why? C was subsequent, latest in time, bought without any notice. B also bought without notice, but occurred earlier. So the law rewards whoever is last in the chain. That's who the law records.
In number 2, it lists all the transfers and then it says B records, C records.
Mm-hmm.
This is all chronological, correct?
Yeah.
Now, in a problem, could be that B records before it's conveyed to C.
Very good. So that's Brittany's question, right? What if B recorded before C?
No, before A conveyed it to C.
At that point, would C still be BFB?
No.
She's right.
It would be B.
She's exactly correct. Brittany, everyone heard what she said. If B was more diligent, and if B recorded first, C would not have been a bona fide purchaser because there's constructive notice, right? Because they can figure out, look, what? Because you figure out, look, we know that A got it from O. You go back to the index. You see who else did O sell to? Oh, wait a minute. O sold it to B also. And B recorded that deed. And because B recorded that deed, C is no longer bona fide.
And when A would have conveyed it to C, C would have had constructive notice because it was already on record.
Bingo.
That
Bingo.
he had it.
Let me break this up. Brittany put a very good question forward, right? We know that O, I'll just use Mike and Mariah, makes it easier, right? I sell Blackacre to Mike, I sell to Mariah. Mariah then sells to Lauren. But if Mike records his deed, Lauren can find out about that. And if Lauren finds out about my deed with Mike, her transaction with Mariah is no longer in good faith because there's notice. Pay very close attention, very, very close attention to the sequencing. And don't just get to the end of the paragraph and say, who has the strongest interest? Ask at every juncture, after each sentence, whose interest is stronger? Now. So I think your first Langdell session is this. All right, everyone, this is John Paul. He was in my class last year, right?
Yes.
And you know what you're doing this weekend, don't you?
Yeah.
This. So I think it would be a good use of time for a Langdell this session is to go over race statutes and notice statutes. Think it's a good use of time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
If you can, you don't have to, but there's a book, the example and explanation book. That's usually what I have my Langdells work with. So if you get a copy of that, the library has. If you don't have it, you can find it. Make copies, whatever. Go through the drills with the notice and the race notice questions. These are not intuitive. They're not easy, but you're going to need to understand them. And this little experience over here teaches me that we have to reinforce it. So your first Langdell is on Saturday, and then your makeup class is on Sunday. If you don't get something, you come talk to me on Sunday about it. I'd be happy to go over it. But John Paul was my class last year. Did very well. He will help you put together your outline, help you put together your notes, and everything else. Man, I was about to call and he was like, wait a minute, that's not right. You're next in the row.
Oh, yep.
I was like, no. Hey, Brittany?
Oh, that's going to be at...
Good question.
That's going to be at 12 to 1:30.
Good.
And I was going to take a poll. Y'all prefer kolaches or donuts?
Whoa.
Because I know y'all are just going to be waking up. Because I was too.
Do you have a keto option?
A keto option?
Oh,
Absolutely
God.
not.
That's why I picked them.
No bacon? Kolaches, donuts? My choice. Kolaches?
Okay.
Listen.
All right. All right. Shh. Okay, very good. So your mission, if you choose to accept, is to actually go to John Paul's class and go over these questions. And John Paul, if I may suggest, maybe just go over this question 2 again. Question 2, it's on page 680. Was it 685? And just do this one over again? No, just in this book.
I did not have that with me right now.
Oh, yeah, but just write down. So it's example number 2, question 2 on page 685. There might be a different edition of the book I can send to you later. But go over that one for the notice and also the race notice. I don't have time to race notice, but do the exact same question for the race notice, and that'll be your weekend assignment. Okay? You need to know these things. Just drill them. They're tricky, but you have to drill them. Okay? All right. Let's do the last case. It took too long. 15 minutes. All right. Took too long. Thank you so much. Rochelle, what were the facts in the last case? Messer-Smith versus... Messer-Smith versus Smith. I always can't say this name. Good.
That Messer-Smith family she owned, and she conveyed it supposedly to the Smith family. But she conveyed it to her nephew also.
Uh-oh.
And
yeah.
When he went to record the title, I guess it wasn't accurate.
Okay. So this is a classic case where the same property is sold to multiple people. And the timeline in this case is fairly complicated. I don't have enough time, no pun intended, but I don't have time to go through the timeline in detail. But let me try to synthesize, there it is. Let me try to synthesize the case as best as they could. You have to have what are called acknowledgments, right? This is what's called a notary. Anyone ever used a notary before? So if you ever have like a deed on property or any sort of purchasing of a car or something, you're required to have someone licensed by the state to approve the transaction. This serves a similar function to having witnesses when you sign a will. Why? It reduces fraud, right? It reduces the chance that, you know, I just had some random person sign a piece of paper without the person being there. I can just, you know, forge a signature. But what happened in this case is tricky, is apparently the notary wasn't very precise. And the notary basically did stuff by phone, right? Where they signed a lease at one point, then they realized it was a mistake because it said his versus hers or hers versus his. Not that I don't think it would even matter, but they ripped it up apparently. And then you know, the notary called up and said, "You agree?" Like, "Yeah, we agree." It's problematic when you don't know if a recorded deed is valid. And this raises a very difficult question. How is a person merely looking at a register to know if the notary was appropriate? And there's no good way of knowing it, right? Okay. But if a deed is not entitled to be recorded, the record doesn't constitute notice. Okay? If the deed was not entitled to be recorded, that is, there was not the proper acknowledgement, it's not a valid instrument. I always have difficulty with this case because how are you supposed to know in advance if the notary was good or bad, right? You assume the document is what it says it is. But this is where a case where the fact that the notary wasn't properly achieved eliminates the BFP status. It basically says the recording wasn't valid. It's a weird case. Okay. All right. Questions on that one? Sorry, the example 2 took me longer than I expected. I don't like having to rush through cases. All right. Anything else? So you will see John Paul on Saturday. You will see me on Sunday, but you will not see me on Monday the 10th. That is Rosh Hashanah. Have a sweet New Year, everyone. Thank you, Rosh. No, I'm not going to be here.